He's making money, his rich friends are making money, his families are making money, but we saw it at the opening of this show. Who has a 401k? There's like 3 people clapped. It's a nice representation. A lot of Americans simply aren't doing nearly as well as he is.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is if you basically claim success based on the stock market, you're setting yourself up for a problem down the road, because it's always a question of when, not if, you have corrections. Stock markets, last I checked, do not defy the laws of gravity. Also, though, I'm old enough to remember when going into government meant a degree of sacrifice. The idea is that not just the reality, but the appearance of conflict of interest, part of the public trust. And the idea that the blatancy of this, the nakedness of it, it's really interesting. That, in a sense, he's getting away with corruption. People went after Hunter Biden for what now looks like penny ante stuff, and without excusing that. But this is on a scale that is really unprecedented, to the best of my knowledge. But I actually think the president and his family are getting away with it. It's almost like we're all, Jonathan, so worn down, and he's just doing it. And it's one of a million things, from reflecting pools to this to you name it. And so we can talk about it, but again, his family is going to become one of the wealthier families in America or the world.
When you talk about $636 million from this Trump meme coin, which effectively has no actual value, the president made a ton of money off that, but the people he talked into investing in it lost money on it. And that's why you hear perhaps a growing number of even MAGA voters expressing their frustration with President Trump. MS Now spoke to some Florida residents who voted for Trump and asked them about the president making more than $2 billion in his first year in office for himself, including more than $1 billion on those crypto ventures. Here's what they had to say.
That's very frustrating to actually hear that. And like I said, I don't do the politics and stuff, but to hear that come from another American that, is not getting $2 million put in their pocket.
$2 billion.
$2 billion, $2 million, $2 trillion, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, and that would help out a lot of people around here. A lot of homeless people. You could open shelters. You could really help somebody out with that.
Somebody's making money on the side. It's not me. That's all I got to say.
Is it frustrating?
It's frustrating that you see your president getting richer and richer, and the middle class is getting poorer. And that's about it.
Life in America right now, the economy's tough. People are struggling, And hopefully it'll change.
He definitely made lots of promises, and he made them seem like they were going to come a lot quicker, faster than they actually were to ever come or ever will come. Like 90% of all the elections in the past, the candidates, they promised the moon and fall short at the end of the day. But, I don't think it was the Donald Trump that we saw in 2016, and I don't think that he can make up for it in what's left of his current term.
Those are all Trump voters in Florida yesterday. The Wall Street Journal editorial board out this morning with a new piece they're calling The Trump Family an Honest Graft. The board writes this, quote, Americans tell pollsters they don't think they're getting ahead financially, but President Trump and his family are having no trouble, judging from his 2025 financial disclosure report released Tuesday. The Trump clan is cashing in on the presidency in big and sketchy ways, writes the Journal. It's hard to believe the Trump boys would be able to do the same deals if Dad wasn't in the Oval Office. The main difference between Hunter Biden's foreign dealings and the Trump projects is that the Trumps are brazenly open about theirs. There will be political costs for Republicans. If Democrats take back the House or Senate this November, they will have a field day probing the Trump family deals. Charges of GOP corruption will resound through 2028. Americans, and especially Trump supporters, deserve better from this or any president. Again, Gene Robinson, those were Trump voters we heard from. That's the Wall Street Journal editorial board that we heard from after that. This is not coming from progressives. This is not coming from the left. This is not a political matter to a lot of people, and that's probably why it's broken through in such a way when you have so many people, again, struggling, while the president seems shameless and proud, in fact, of making $2 billion for himself just in the first year in office.
Yeah, neither Trump nor his family seems to care at all about these appearances. They just want to make the money. I think that was part of the plan all along, was to cash in on the presidency to the maximum. extent possible, not just a little bit, not just, they don't do things halfway. They're just going to try to climb the billionaires list on the backs of the American people, on the backs of the American taxpayer. It is outrageous, especially on the day when he's flying around in this jet, this $400 million jet, renovated to the tune of another at least $400 million given to him by Qatar, and apparently going to be given to him personally or to his foundation when he leaves office. This is just simple graft. It's corruption, and maybe people in general are numb to this, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that people are immune to this, because it's just so blatant, and it's out there in a way that it's hard to ignore.
So Republicans on Capitol Hill have twisted themselves in knots for the last decade to defend whatever President Trump does. How did they do it this time? Well, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, who, of course, led an extensive investigation into the Biden family's financial dealings that went nowhere, yesterday was pressed about President Trump's new financial disclosures.
Well, first of all, the difference in Trump and Biden is Trump's putting him on his disclosure form. So he's being transparent about the great amount of wealth that he's accumulated over the past 12 months, whereas the Biden family were not transparent and to this day have not admitted what I believe you and I have talked about before. They were taking money from other countries. Now, do I like what President Trump's doing? I mean, that's obviously another discussion. But at the end of the day, what he's done is he's filled out his disclosure form, and I don't think he's left anything out. So he's in compliance with the law. I think the laws should be looked at with respect to what assets and what type of income a president and their family should be allowed to earn while the president's in office. We've never had a president that was a businessman.
Congressman Comer, Ali, as you know very well, is known almost only for his investigation into Hunter Biden. He was very concerned about his sitting on the board of Burisma while his father was vice president, and then dug into elements of his personal life as well. Here he says, of course it's corrupt. It's wrong, but at least he's telling us he's doing it.
Well, that's a different conversation, right? I mean, I think when the Journal says that it is brazenly open, the way that Trump is doing this graft right now of trying to make these billions and billions of dollars, they're saying it incredulously. Can you believe they're doing it so out in the open? Comer is basically saying, well, they're doing it in the open. Points for transparency and for abiding by the law of disclosing the money that you are making. I do think that it begs the question of the way that Republicans will try to defend this in Washington, the way that Democrats will mire this in the golden age of letter writing, saying if we get the majority back, we will investigate this. Ultimately, the most important thing is what those voters told our colleague Alex Tabbitt. The idea that it smacks of something unfair, that they are, it seemed, at a gas station when prices are only just now coming back to reality after an Iran war that Trump began, and they are still saying they have affordability concerns. And the White House seemingly continues to be making a split screen that is unfortunate politically for them heading into the midterms, where affordability remains the top concern, whether it's on housing or health care or on gas prices. And the administration continues with financial disclosures that show not millions, as Tabbitt had to correct, but billions of dollars in wealth growth for them and the Trump sons. And then it's a continued split screen that they had even back during the government shutdown at the end of last year. Trump was throwing Gatsby parties at Mar-a-Lago, and the government was shut down, and we were questioning how Americans were going to be standing in food bank lines because they didn't know when their next paycheck was coming. It's the same split screen that happens when Trump calls affordability a hoax, but then continues to press on vanity projects like the reflecting pool and building the claw on the White House North Lawn or South Lawn. And so I think they continue with these split screens against the backdrop, Willie, of the fact that they had basically an open book test on the right way to message on the economy. They passed that test, actually, in 2024 when Trump won the election by continuously highlighting the ways that the Biden-Harris administration wasn't effectively communicating or solving affordability questions. And yet, even after watching that administration struggle to pass that test, this administration is now coming back around with, frankly, the same talking point we heard from the Biden admin, which was, isn't the stock market doing great? And it turns out, once again, the stock market is not the litmus test for the economy that the American public wants.
And Republicans for months now have been privately communicating to the White House, affordability is an issue. We see the polls. That's what voters care about. And Trump simply won't address it. He can't acknowledge that Americans are hurting, that this isn't the so-called golden age. And Willie, Ali is right in terms of, this being a key issue, the split screen between, Trump and his family, profiting and how his voters aren't. We have the MS Now is now, we've gone to several states in the last couple of weeks talking to Trump voters, and we're hearing that same sort of message time and time again. These voters really disaffected and disillusioned with how he's steering things. And the other point I'd make, and Richard and I were chatting here briefly on set, it's affordability plus corruption. We saw that work in Hungary against Orban. That was a very effective messaging. And I've talked to some Democrats in the last week or two who feel like, yes, affordability is going to be issue number one, but they're seeing in their sort of focus groups, they're seeing in the polling they're doing, corruption matters too. Because it's one thing to say, for Americans to say, hey, I'm not doing well, but it's another for them to have to face, I'm not doing well, but look at how he's profiting. He's making billions at this moment, he and his rich cronies. And that is a real anger that they're seeing in the electorate that the Democrats hope they can use to their advantage this fall.